For 62 years, I'd lived by Willow Creek, watching every kind of neighbor drama unfold along its banks. There were the careless ones, letting their piers crumble into the current. The loud ones, blasting music at 2 a.m. in July. And the nitpickers, clutching their HOA rules like a holy grail, ready to pounce on a stray weed or an unapproved mailbox. But none of them held a candle to Margaret Hensley. She had the polished charm of a politician's wife and the ruthlessness of a debt collector. Her words dripped with "we" when she meant "I," and she never heard "no" without scheming a comeback. One crisp morning in September 2024, she rolled up to my driveway with her little posse of HOA board members in identical navy jackets, one gripping a clipboard like it was a court order. I was on my porch, sipping coffee, watching the fog drift off the creek, just like my father used to. This place wasn't just a house. It was roots, history, the faint echo of my great-uncle's hammer as he built the footbridge across the creek in 1928. Margaret didn't glance at the bridge. She fixed her eyes on me like I was trespassing on her turf. "Mr. Callahan," she started, her voice sugary enough to rot teeth. "The board has voted to remove the unauthorized structure from community waters." I let the steam from my mug curl into the chilly air before replying. "Unauthorized structure? You mean the bridge my family's owned since 28? Her lips twitched, not a smile, more like a shark sensing blood. "No recorded easement," she said. "Our survey shows part of that bridge sits on HOA land. Demolition starts tomorrow." It wasn't her words that stung. It was the smug certainty, like the creek belonged to her, like my family's sweat meant nothing. I'd faced her kind before in boardrooms, on construction sites, over faded deeds older than this town. And I'd learned one truth. The loudest voices always stand on the shakiest ground. "Is that so?" I said, more statement than question. She nodded to one of her lackeys, who handed me a folded notice. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. The HOA stench was all over it. "This is your formal warning," she added, as if that made it law. "Save it," I cut in, voice steady. "I've got my own papers, from an authority higher than your board." Her goons shifted, one puffing up like he wanted a fight, the other itching to speak. Margaret just tilted her head, studying me like a puzzle she'd already solved. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Callahan," she said softly. I set my mug on the porch rail, the ceramic clinking against wood that had held 3 generations. "Maybe," I said. "But mistakes? Some you walk away from. Some you don't." Her eyes flickered. "Is that a threat?" I shook my head. "Just a fact." She turned, heels grinding the gravel, her entourage trailing like obedient dogs. The fog had lifted, and the sun lit the bridge, old oak darkened by time, iron bolts glinting. My great-uncle's bridge. My bridge. I sipped the last of my coffee and watched the creek gleam. If they wanted a war, they'd just fired the first shot. And I knew exactly how it would end. Living by a creek teaches you patience. Currents shift. Water rises and falls. Storms come whether you're ready or not. And if you've been here long enough, you know you can't stop a storm, but you can damn well prepare for it. I didn't chase after Margaret that morning. Didn't stand in my driveway shouting like some fool on the news. I sat back in my great-uncle's rocking chair, took another sip, and let her words settle. That bridge wasn't just planks and bolts. It was a promise, forged in 1928 when my great-uncle Thomas hauled timber through mud to connect our cabin to the road. He built it with his own hands, a Bible tucked in his pocket. And when he finished, he told my father, "As long as this bridge stands, this land is ours." I could still see him, broad shoulders, calloused hands, the scent of sawdust in the summer heat. He's been gone 45 years, but he was right there with me on that porch. Margaret? She was just a suit with a title that meant nothing against the earth beneath my boots. After they left, I walked to the creek's edge. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror. But I knew what it could do if unleashed. I checked the old dam gate's steel and rivets, maintained better than the county's bridges. My great-uncle taught me every lever, every chain, every way to read the water's pressure. To most, the dam was just a scenic backdrop for tourists. To me, it was a loaded gun aimed at the lowlands where Margaret's pride and joy sat. A $3 million resort, barely 2 years old, with 15 cabins, a waterfront bistro, and a conference center built right in the floodplain. She called it a luxury retreat. I called it a gamble begging to lose. She'd built it without respecting the creek. That was her first mistake. Thinking she could take my bridge? That was her last. I spent the afternoon in my shed, moving deliberately. I pulled out land surveys, old maps, deeds with my father's notes scrawled in the margin-shy watermarks from the flood of '59. Every document was a weapon in my arsenal. By dusk, I had a stack, 3 certified copies of the 1928 deed, photos of the bridge standing for nearly a century, and my great-uncle's leather journal, filled with dam maintenance logs. I lit a lantern, the crickets humming outside, the creek whispering against the bank. There's a stillness out here city folks can't grasp a presence, like the land's watching, waiting to see your next move. Across the creek, the resort's lights glowed. I pictured Margaret in her office, sipping wine, plotting her next win. She thought she'd broken me. She didn't know she'd just started a clock she couldn't stop. They came at dawn, not for necessity, but for show. Diesel engines growled, tires crunching dirt. From my porch, I saw a convoy crawling down the Roado white SUV with the Willow Creek HOA logo, Margaret in the passenger seat, chin high, sunglasses on like she was royalty. Behind her, flatbeds hauled an excavator and a backhoe, followed by empty dump trucks ready to swallow my bridge. I leaned against the porch post, coffee in hand, and let them come. A dozen workers climbed out, burly guys with tool belts, the kind who lift beams, not weights. Margaret stepped out last, turning to her foreman, a stocky man with a hard hat under his arm. "Get it done," she said, loud enough for me to hear. Only then did she look my way. "Mr. Callahan," she called, voice dripping with fake courtesy. "We're here to remove an unsafe structure from shared waters. For your safety, stay on your porch." I sipped my coffee. "Not shared waters, Margaret. You know that." Her smile didn't touch her eyes. The machines roared to life. The excavator's arms swung over the bridge, its jaws biting into the railing. Wood splintered, each crack hitting me like a punch. Every board was a memory fishing with my father, hauling firewood in winter, my great-uncle's boots on those planks. By noon, half the bridge was gone, planks tossed into the trucks like trash, bolts clanging against steel. Margaret stood by, arms crossed, snapping photos on her phone. I stayed in my chair, rocking slowly, the creak of wood under me louder than the destruction. You don't fight when they expect it. You wait for the moment they think they've won. By midday, the last beam was lifted. The creek looked wrong without the bridge, exposed and restless. Margaret took off her sunglasses, giving the scene a final nod. "That's that," she said. "One less hazard." I raised my mug. "Congratulations, Margaret. You've turned a century of history into firewood." Her smirk returned. "History doesn't pay the bills." She climbed into her SUV, the convoy rolling away, leaving torn earth in silence. I waited until their engines faded, then stood, stretching the ache from my bones. The creek was still calm, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way. Not for long. As a retired game warden, I'd learned 2 things about fights. First, you don't win by striking first. Second, you win by hiding the real blow. So I didn't storm the creek or call the papers. I made coffee and started making calls. First to Pete Larson, who ran the tackle shop on the North Bank for decades. Pete kept a mental tally of every slight in this county. "Jack," he said after I told him about the bridge, "I knew they'd try something, but damn." I called Sarah and Mike Turner next. Sarah was still fuming over Margaret redrawing the creek map, claiming half their dock was on HOA land. Mike hadn't forgotten the fines for their barbecue smoke. By nightfall, I had a list of grievances, dock disputes, petty citations, forced sales to Margaret's developer pals. Everyone on that list had one thing in common. They stayed, and they despised her. That night, I spread a map of Willow Creek across my table, moonlight glinting off the water outside. The creek wasn't just water, it was patience, holding power in silence. My finger traced the shoreline, past my cabin, past the bridge's ghost, to the dam on the west bank. My great-uncle built it in '32, all timber and grit. It was manual, its steel wheel controlling the creek's flow. I knew the math: rainfall, slope, how far the water would climb before hitting the flood channel. And I knew exactly which of Margaret's projects sat too close to that line. Her resort, with its illegal docks and filled-in lawns, was a sitting duck. Over the next week, I moved quietly. I bought groceries, ate at Rosie's diner, waved to the mail carrier. But behind the scenes, the plan grew. Pete connected me with Clara Bone, a retired county planner who knew every permit filed since the 80s. She sent me records of Margaret's shortcuts. Mike's cousin, Ethan, a drone enthusiast, got me aerial shots of every unpermitted deck and dock. By Friday, my table was a war room maps, photos, legal codes, all circling Margaret's resort. I sipped bourbon, staring at the creek. It was waiting, just like me. I walked the creek's edge daily, sticking to old hunting trails, noting every culvert, every marker. The bridge site was just broken timbers now, the air heavy with rot. Margaret hadn't just destroyed Wooge, tried to cut a community in half. At the dam, I checked the gate's wheel, rusted but solid, its lock untouched since my great-uncle's day. I had the key. The math was clear. One turn, and the resort's lawns would be underwater. But I didn't act. Revenge needs timing. One day, I found an illegal water intake near the resort, pumping creek water for their fountains without a permit. I snapped photos, added them to my file. By week's end, I had everything: rainfall data, violation records, proof the resort sat on misclassified land. I sat on my porch, the creek gleaming under the stars. The lever was mine. All it needed was a pull. I showed up at the HOA's Community Enhancement meeting unannounced, coffee in hand, old jacket on my shoulders. Margaret's smile faltered when she saw me. "Jack," she said, "here to complain again?" I grinned. "Nah, just curious about your great work." For an hour, I played the defeated old man, nodding at their plans, asking about the resort's opening. But I watched who sat where, who checked their phone, who was missing. Their maintenance head, Greg Walsh, was out of town. His keys, his codes, maybe his truck unattended. The next day, I started fishing. I lingered by the bridge site, muttering about selling my land, loud enough for gossip to spread. I let a junior board member overhear me at Rosie's, asking about moving trucks. By evening, Margaret likely thought I was broken. Meanwhile, Ethan's drone flew at night, capturing the resort's irrigation schedule, its illegal pumps. Clara sent rainfall forecasts: 10 days of rising water, perfect cover. Mike found the resort's insurance gap, no coverage for natural water level changes. The trap was set. That Friday night, I walked to the dam. Moonlight hit the steel wheel, the creek humming below. I unlocked the gate, my hands steady. It resisted at first, years of rust fighting back. Then it turned, a low groan rising as water hissed through. I moved slowly, timing the release to blend with the rain. The creek stirred, a slow inhale. I locked the gate partway, hiding my work. From the shore, nothing looked different. Yet, the first morning, the creek seemed unchanged to most. But I saw it water half an inch higher on the old markers. I sipped coffee, watching the resort bustle, oblivious. By midweek, signs emerged. A path stayed wet all day. A dock sat lower. Reeds grew where they shouldn't. I wandered by, tipping my hat to workers, blending in. The rain helped, steady and heavy, masking my nudge. I adjusted the gate at night, a quarter turn here, an eighth there. The creek climbed, silent and relentless. By Friday, whispers spread. Rosie mentioned a shaky pier. Mike heard maintenance gripe about overworked pumps. I nodded, saying nothing. That night, I saw water pooling near the resort's volleyball court, the fire pit a soggy mess. The creek sound had changed deeper, hungrier. On Sunday, it broke. Rain pounded all night, and by dawn, the water kissed the insurance trigger line Mike had marked. I watched from my porch as the resort scrambled, pumps screaming, crews hauling sandbags, Margaret wading in mud, yelling into her phone. By Monday, panic ruled. The parking lot was a swamp, cabins evacuated, the boardwalk submerged. A retaining wall collapsed at midnight, water roaring through. I stood on the ridge, watching Margaret try to command the chaos, her blouse soaked, her control gone. A cabin tilted, then slid into the creek. Workers stopped fighting, staring as their efforts drowned. An insurance adjuster arrived, shaking his head. The lake had won. Weeks later, the resort was a husk. Margaret resigned, citing stress. The bank foreclosed, and the county ordered the land restored to its natural state. I walked the dam one evening, the creek glowing under a crimson sunset. A loon called, its note echoing. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. A note lay under a stone. You win. I left it there. Victory wasn't about them knowing they'd lost. It was about protecting what was mine. What would you have done in my place? Fought with lawyers or taken matters into your own hands? Was I justified, or did I go too far? Should history bow to progress, or does the past deserve to stand? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that make you think.